That's a nice pole. Getting any bites?
We're tracking something big in these trees. You didn't happen to see it, did you, son?
Have you ever seen a giant cry? In the heart of the Bridger-Teton mountains, 13-year-old Cal Bennett stumbles upon a wounded Bigfoot, not a monster, but a being in pain, weeping like a person who's lost everything. In that moment, Cal makes a choice. Not to run, not to fear, but to help. What unfolds is a story of trust, ancient secrets hidden in stone, and a boy who chooses kindness when the world tells him not to. Bigfoot, it turns out, is not a legend of terror, but a mirror to our own humanity. And sometimes, the ones we fear most are the ones who've been trying to protect us all along. Where are you watching this from, dear friend? And if you don't mind sharing, what's your name? Because I believe stories like this can travel farther than any one of us ever could, especially with someone like you to carry it forward. If this story touched your heart, give it a like, subscribe, and help us build a little corner of the internet where those who believe in compassion and Bigfoot can belong. The ice was melting in layers, drip by drip, like a forest holding its breath. All across the Bridger-Teton woods, winter loosened its grip. Snow clung to the last shadows beneath spruce and pine, but the sun had begun its quiet rebellion. And in that long thaw of April, a boy stood alone on a mossy trail with his hands tucked deep into the pockets of a faded blue hoodie. Cal Bennett was 13 and carried a silence bigger than himself. He didn't speak much to the kids in town, didn't care for the creak of desks or the buzz of fluorescent lights. Most days after school, he hiked up to the old hunting cabin his father built years ago, the one that still smelled like leather and smoke, even now. No one went there but him, not even his grandma Maggie. It was where his father's flannel hung on the wall like a ghost that refused to leave, where old Polaroids curled under the weight of time, where a boy could pretend the world still made sense. That afternoon, Rusty, the old dog his dad rescued when Cal was barely a toddler, stopped cold on the trail. The hound's ears lifted, nose twitching. Then he bolted off into the undergrowth, as if something had spoken to him without words. "Rusty, get back here!" Cal stumbled forward, slipping on wet needles, branches brushing his face. But the dog was already gone, weaving through the trees like he knew where he was being called. And then Cal heard it. Not the whimper of a fox, not the yelp of a hurt coyote. This was deeper, like something trying not to cry but failing. The sound echoed off the bare bones of the trees, sharp and broken, and it didn't belong to any creature Cal had ever heard before. He slowed, boots sinking into soft thawed patches. The air smelled like pine sap and rust. Up ahead, past a curtain of alder, Rusty stood frozen at the edge of a small clearing. At the center of it, crumpled against a tree stump, was something massive. For a moment Cal couldn't move. He couldn't even breathe. It was taller than any man he'd seen, but hunched down, folded in on itself. Thick fur matted with blood. Its leg twisted horribly in the steel teeth of a hunter's trap. Snow around it soaked crimson. One massive hand gripped the trap's jagged edge. The other was pressed tight to its chest like it was trying to hold itself together. And then Cal saw its face. Not the face of a bear, not the face of a beast, but something closer. Weathered skin peeked through patches of dark brown fur. Brows heavy over amber eyes that shimmered, not wild, but aware. And beneath the mat of hair and dirt, down its cheek. Tears, real tears, Cal's breath caught. He took a step back. Rusty let out a low growl, tail stiff. But the creature didn't snarl, didn't move. It just watched him, chest rising in pain, as if ashamed to be seen like this. Every part of Cal screamed to run, to back away slowly and pretend this had never happened. But then the thing blinked, slow and human-like. And Cal thought of the photo in the cabin, the one of his dad with him on his shoulders, both laughing near the same tree line. He thought of what his dad used to say, half joking, half true. Kindness is what keeps a man, even in a world that forgets it. Cal swallowed hard, dropped his pack, and stepped forward. The snow creaked beneath him. He knelt beside the trap, hands trembling. The iron was old but brutal, one of those outlawed kinds, sharp enough to cut through bone. The boy glanced up at the creature. Its breath hitched, but it didn't flinch. I'm gonna help, okay? Cal whispered, like maybe words could soften the steel. He gripped the side of the trap, fingers slipping. It didn't budge. He tried again. Rusted metal bit into his palm. His skin split open. Blood smeared across the iron, dripping onto snow that had already seen too much of it. The creature let out a low sound, part groan, part growl. Cal paused, panting, lightheaded, and then it did something that made the world tilt sideways. The creature moved, not to strike, not to flee, but to help. It shifted its massive hand, pushing gently at the base of the trap, angling its leg just right. Cal understood, in some strange, unspoken language. He understood. Together, they pulled. The trap sprang open. The leg dropped free. Cal fell backward into the snow, gasping. The creature didn't scream, didn't roar. It just exhaled like it had been holding that breath for years. Rusty crept closer, tail low, still cautious, but no longer growling. The boy pulled an old tarp from his backpack, the one his dad had used to wrap elk meat years ago. It smelled of smoke and resin and memories too heavy to name. Cal spread it out, gesturing to the creature. "I can't leave you here," he murmured. The creature didn't move, so Cal took a step closer. Rusty barked once. Not loud, not afraid. Just a sound to say, "I'm watching you." The boy reached out, tugging gently at the creature's uninjured arm. It leaned forward, slowly, with effort. The tarp crinkled under its weight. Somehow Cal dragged it inch by inch, Rusty helping by nudging from behind, his old body working harder than it had in years. Wind howled between the trees, biting into Cal's neck and ears. But he didn't stop. Couldn't. The cabin wasn't far, but each step through the slush felt like forever. His arms burned, his palms bled. But the thought of leaving it there, helpless and bleeding, made something crack in him that he didn't know how to repair. Snowflakes began to fall again, the last of the season. Soft, drifting, one landed on the creature's face. And for a second, Cal thought it might be another tear. They reached the cabin just as dusk settled over the ridgeline. The light turned gold, then blue. The tarp, soaked through, clung to the porch like a surrender flag. Cal kicked the door open, hauled the creature inside, and laid it down by the stone hearth. The room was cold and musty, the kind of cold that lingered in old logs and forgotten corners. He threw kindling into the firebox, struck a match, and prayed the chimney hadn't clogged since last fall. Flames caught, crackled, smoke twisted upward. The creature lay curled, chest heaving, eyes half-lidded but watching. Rusty collapsed beside it, body pressed close like a soldier keeping guard. Cal didn't speak. He just stared at the two of them, boy, beast, and dog, huddled in a room built by a man who once believed in the wild. And as the firelight flickered across the creature's battered body, Cal remembered something his dad had said that last trip before the accident. If you ever see something in the woods that shouldn't exist, that means you're still alive enough to notice what matters. The boy reached for a wool blanket, draped it over the creature's legs. Outside, the snow fell heavier now, erasing every trace of the trail they had taken. And as Cal looked past the frosted window into the darkness beyond, he whispered so low only the fire could hear him. "If it were you, Dad, you'd have done the same thing." And the wind outside the cabin howled like it agreed. The wind rattled the loose tin above the porch, but inside the cabin, there was only the soft crackle of fire and the rhythm of breath. Cal sat cross-legged on the old rug his father once used for cleaning rifles, the red and brown threads now faded with time and soot. His hands, raw from dragging the creature, moved carefully. He poured warm water into a dented metal basin and soaked a rag. The cloth steamed. The room smelled like pine smoke, blood, and old wood. He glanced over. The creature lay still beside the hearth, its massive form curled slightly to one side, the injured leg wrapped in thick layers of gauze and flannel. Cal had torn from the cabin's backup bedding. It hadn't made a sound since they arrived. Its eyes, half-lidded, tracked his every move. Not suspicious, just tired. Rusty lay nestled in the crook between its ribs and elbow, curled tight like he belonged there. The same dog that had growled when they found it now dozed, his chin resting on the creature's arm. Cal didn't understand any of it. He didn't need to. He dipped the cloth again, wrung it out, then pressed it gently against the creature's forehead. Beneath the fur, the skin was hot. Cal whispered a quiet sorry as the creature winced. It didn't pull away. Minutes passed like hours. Outside, the wind climbed higher, carrying with it the sharp smell of melted snow, bark, and wet earth. Inside, the fire hissed and the clock, long since broken, ticked once every few seconds, an illusion of time trying to move forward. Cal reached for the canteen, unscrewed the lid, and held it up. "You thirsty?" His voice barely broke the silence. The creature didn't answer, of course, but its eyes followed the canteen. Cal set it down near its outstretched hand, not too close. Just enough. It waited a moment. Then slowly, deliberately, one giant hand reached out. Knuckles swollen, fur damp. It grasped the canteen like it had done it 1,000 times before. Lifted it, drank. No spills, no fumbling. Cal watched in quiet awe. The firelight danced across the creature's features, casting shadows in the hollows of its cheekbones, around its heavy brow. Cal could see now that its face, though foreign, was built on something hauntingly familiar. Not human, not animal, but something ancient, something patient. After a while, Cal stood and grabbed the small photo frame that always sat near the hearth. The one with him, his dad, and his mom before the accident. The last fall before the world came apart. He placed it near the creature, just to see. It didn't move at first, but then the creature shifted, inching closer, eyes narrowing. Its thick fingers moved toward the frame, not to grab it, but to trace, lightly, slowly, the shape of the man in the picture. Cal swallowed. A strange tightness gathered in his chest. "You remember him?" he asked, almost involuntarily. The creature blinked. Its breathing hitched. For the first time since they met, it looked away, eyes flicking toward the corner of the cabin where dust collected in the beam gaps, as if it had just seen something it didn't want to. Rusty stirred, lifting his head. His ears twitched. Then, a small sound. A soft crackle from the old radio on the shelf near the window. The antenna bent, dial long, stuck between stations. Static turned to fragments. Reported sightings. Last night, creature survived. Cal snapped toward it, hands fumbling with the volume knob. Multiple eyewitnesses. Claims of a beast near Bridger-Teton, described as large, upright, surviving despite wounds consistent with a gunshot, 20 years ago. The signal faded, static again. Cal stared at the speaker, as if willing it to speak again. His thoughts raced. Rusty stood up fully now, staring toward the door, ears flat, low whine rising in his throat. The creature moved. Suddenly alert, it sat up straighter, hand moving toward the cabin door. The latch clinked. No, wait. Cal reached out, panicked. "Don't!" But it was already there. The door creaked open. Cold air rushed in, sweeping across the floorboards, snuffing some of the warmth from the fire. The creature paused in the doorway, a single step forward, and then it stopped. Cal stood frozen, heart pounding, not from fear, not anymore, but from something else. The fear of watching something leave before it was ready. The creature turned its head slightly, looked back, and then, slowly, it stepped back inside. Cal exhaled. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. The door clicked shut. The creature sat down near the fire again, this time closer. As the heat wrapped around them, something shifted, not just in the room, but in the space between them. The air no longer held silence, but something gentler. Outside, snow began to fall again. Not heavy, just enough to blur the edges of the woods. Inside, the old floor creaked. Cal moved to the kitchen nook, poured the last of the soup into a bowl, and brought it back. He set it down on the floor. Rusty wagged his tail, tongue lolling out like he was waiting for the creature to try it first. The creature didn't eat. Instead, it leaned forward, picked up a small piece of the flannel Cal had used for bandaging, turned it over in its hand, then, without looking, reached down and brushed its fingertips along Rusty's back. The dog didn't flinch. He leaned in. A minute later, the creature did something Cal would never forget. It smiled, not wide, not with teeth, but with eyes, just enough. That night, sometime after the fire died down to coals, headlights splashed across the edge of the woods. A pair of boots crushed the soft ground beyond the trail. Someone approached the cabin. A knock, firm, then again harder. "Cal?" a voice called. "You in there?" It was Maggie. Cal scrambled to his feet, heart hammering. He turned back to the creature, but it had already moved. Blankets heaped empty, floorboards silent. Another knock. "Cal, open this door right now." He cracked it open an inch. Maggie stood there in her thick winter coat, scarf still around her neck, eyes narrowed with a mix of fear and suspicion. "Your school called. You didn't show. I've been looking everywhere." "I'm fine," Cal said quickly. "Just wanted to be up here, like always." Her eyes darted past him into the cabin's interior. "Is someone with you?" Cal shook his head. "No, just me and Rusty." She squinted. Behind him, under the far side of the couch, the creature lay motionless, barely visible under thick old quilts. Cal stepped sideways, blocking her view. Maggie's voice softened. "Your dad would want you safe, Cal. You know that." "I am," he said. She reached for his arm. Rusty barked once. Sharp, insistent. Then looked toward the couch, then back at her, as if trying to say something no words could hold. Maggie frowned. "Is there something you're not telling me?" Cal didn't answer. Not yet. Not tonight. He just looked at her, then back toward the fire. "I'm okay," he said again, gentler this time. "Just tired." Maggie exhaled. She pulled him into a hug, her breath catching slightly. Her hand lingered at the back of his neck, thumb brushing the edge of his collar. "All right," she whispered. "But tomorrow, you come home. No arguments." Cal nodded. She looked him over one more time, then turned and walked back into the cold. The door closed. The silence returned. Inside, something still breathed beneath those blankets. Alive, hiding, waiting. And Cal, with hands still stained from blood and snow, sat back down on the rug beside it, not ready to explain, but ready to protect. The snow had crusted over in the night, leaving a thin, brittle shell on top of soft slush. Cal walked slow, careful not to leave fresh tracks. He'd left the cabin before dawn, sliding the door shut with a hush and slipping past the last embers in the fireplace. Rusty wanted to follow. His old bones shifted on the wood floor with a whine, but Cal told him to stay. He needed to do this alone. Each step into the woods was a silent promise to erase what should never have been seen. Cal retraced the trail from 3 days before, the one where he and Rusty had pulled the creature across the melting earth. Already, time and weather had done most of the work. The snow had slumped into muddy veins. Pine needles scattered by wind now covered parts of the path. But traces remained if you knew where to look. And Cal did. He stopped at the edge of the clearing, eyes scanning the torn ground where the trap had been. Blood still stained the roots of an old tree. Cal dropped to his knees, pulling out the small camp shovel from his pack. He worked quietly, methodically, covering the dark patches with moss, dry snow, pine bark. Then he dug a shallow trench to redirect runoff water from the next thaw, to wash what couldn't be buried. But as he stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. He saw it. A boot print. Not his. Not recent. Pressed deep and wide into the softened ground at the clearing's edge, facing the same way he had come from. The shape was blunt. Heavy. Steel-toe hunting boot. Cal's heart skipped. Someone else had been here. He moved backward, checking the trees. Another print, deeper in, and another. Then he heard voices. Low, muttered, but coming closer. Cal ducked behind a boulder draped in lichen. He held his breath. Crunch, pause, crunch. The men came into view. Hank Pruitt walked first, shoulders hunched under a heavy canvas coat, his shotgun slung loose on one arm. Behind him was Clyde, slower, thicker, with a deep scar trailing his jaw like a lightning bolt frozen in skin. Trap's gone, Hank muttered, crouching at the edge of the clearing. Blood too fresh to be old. Whatever got caught, it's moving. Clyde sniffed the air like a dog. You think it's the same one? Same kind if not the same, Clyde grunted. You sure it ain't a bear? Hank turned slowly, one brow raised. You ever seen a bear with prints like these? Cal's stomach dropped as Hank knelt again, pulling something from the snow, a clump of thick fur. Dark brown, almost black. He rubbed it between his fingers, brought it to his nose. Same as 20 years back, same damn stink. Clyde crossed his arms. You never said what happened then, only that it disappeared. It didn't disappear, Hank said, standing now. It got help. Someone covered for it. Clyde hesitated. Like who? Hank didn't answer. He just looked at the line of prints heading north, toward the ridge. Cal slid back behind the rock, heart pounding so loud he was sure they'd hear. He waited until their voices faded, then bolted down a side path, knees splashing in half-frozen slush. His hands gripped saplings for balance. Every sound in the woods felt sharper. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer. By the time he made it back to town, the sun was climbing. His boots dripped onto the wood floor of his grandma's kitchen. Maggie stood at the sink, hands wrist-deep in soapy water. She didn't turn when he came in. You skipped school again. Cal didn't answer. You think I'm stupid? Still no answer. She turned, wiping her hands on a towel, eyes tired, sharper than they used to be. You were in the woods. He shrugged, toeing off one boot. Just wanted to be out. She stared at him. Then she reached under the kitchen table and pulled something out. It was a bone. Long, thick, weathered. The kind that didn't come from any animal around these parts. Wrapped in a plastic feed sack. She unwrapped it slowly, like peeling back a memory. Mrs. Albright's dog found this by the edge of McKinnon Road. She brought it to me because it reminded her of before. Cal stepped closer. The bone wasn't human. But it wasn't bear either. Too straight, too dense. It looked wrong. Like a piece of something not meant to be found. Your dad, she said quietly, found one just like it years ago, right before she trailed off. Her hands shook as she rewrapped the bone. He buried it, said it didn't belong anywhere people could find it. Cal watched her, watched how her fingers trembled, how her voice tightened. He believed there was more to those woods than deer and cougars, she whispered. He saw something, and then he was gone. Cal sat down. The chair creaked. Maggie looked at him. You're doing the same thing, aren't you? He didn't answer. She reached into the drawer beside the sink and pulled out an old photograph. Torn at the edge, water-stained. It showed Cal's father, years younger, standing beside the same cabin where Cal slept most nights now. The same porch. But beside him, partially hidden behind a tree, was something. It wasn't clear, just a shadow, a blur. But it had height, shape, presence. Cal stared. I told him to stop, Maggie said. Told him not to go out after what he saw, but he thought he could protect it. He thought it mattered. She folded the photo. They don't understand, Cal. People don't want mystery. They want targets. He thought of Hank, of Clyde, of the way they followed footprints like bloodhounds. Rusty barked outside. Cal stood quickly, heart rising to his throat. but it was just the mailman. Still, Cal didn't breathe again until the truck was gone. That night, Cal sat in the cabin again. The creature had moved a little, leg healing slowly, eyes brighter than before. Rusty lay curled against its side again. Cal placed another log on the fire, watching the sparks rise. "I saw them today," he said quietly. The creature blinked. "They're looking for you." It didn't flinch. "They found the place you were caught." Still, it didn't move. Only its eyes, those deep, watchful eyes, flicked to the window, then back to him. Cal reached into his backpack and pulled out a strip of hide. "Your fur," he said. "They found some." He offered it. The creature looked, then looked away. Cal set it aside. There was a long silence. Then, out of nowhere, it pointed toward the corner of the room. Cal turned. It was the wooden chest, the one that held his father's hunting gear. He opened it. At the bottom, beneath the rifles and the maps, was a folded page. A note, addressed to no one. It read, "If you find this, I hope you never have to choose what I chose. But if you do, choose kindness. Always." Cal stared at the handwriting. It was his father's. And suddenly everything felt closer. The fire, the woods, the weight of what was coming. Rusty sat up. The creature's head tilted, ears alert. A sound from outside. Footsteps. Then, distant, faint, a voice carried on the wind. "A kid's hiding something. I can feel it." Another voice. Lower, slower. "If he's like his father, we'll find out soon enough." Cal pressed the note to his chest. And for the first time since this all began, he didn't feel alone. Not really. Because some truths, no matter how deep you bury them, find their way back through the snow. The cold came differently up here. It wasn't the kind that bit. It wrapped. Distant and slow, like something watching just beyond the trees. Cal's breath came in small clouds as he led the way along the steep cut of trail beneath the craggy spine of Black Elk Ridge. Pines rose like silent guards around them, branches heavy with lingering snowmelt. The Bigfoot limped behind him, slower today, but steadier. Its weight crushed dried pine needles, each footstep a soft, deliberate echo of something once hunted, now returning to a place almost forgotten. Rusty padded between them, ears turning like weather vanes. Cal had only been to the stone overhang once before, when he was 10. His father had brought him there in spring, right before everything changed. Back then, it had felt like just another cave, just another place to pitch a tent and watch the wind draw stories in the ash. But something about the way his father had stood there that day, staring at the back wall like it could speak, had stayed with him. Now he understood. They reached it by early afternoon. The stone hung like a jaw, frozen mid-roar, moss dripping from its upper lip, the forest peeling away behind them in ragged layers of green and gray. Inside, the cave mouth yawned wide but shallow, more a shelter than a tunnel. Light still reached the back wall, filtered by leaves and moving mist. The Bigfoot ducked to enter, one hand brushing the ceiling, breath steady. Cal walked ahead and stopped. There, on the far wall, carved into the stone and rubbed dark with time, were the symbols, the same ones his father had traced with reverent fingers all those years ago. A wide circle, two parallel lines running through it like twin rivers. At first glance, it looked like nothing. But if you looked long enough, if you stood in the quiet long enough, it began to hum, not out loud. Inside, like a pulse, the Bigfoot stepped closer. Cal turned toward it. "It's been here a long time, hasn't it?" The creature didn't nod, didn't need to. It raised a hand, massive, scarred, strong, and slowly reached toward the wall. Its fingers hovered just over the carvings, tracing them without touch. And then it paused. Near the center of the wall was a smaller shape, less defined, etched in charcoal, not carved. A figure, stick-thin, rough, of a boy and a man standing side by side beneath a tree. Next to them, another shape, larger, with broad shoulders. 3 figures drawn like a child might draw them, but the proportions told a different story. The Bigfoot stepped back. Its chest rose and fell deeper. Something in its eyes folded inward. A memory too far away to hold clearly, but still warm. Still alive. Cal watched it, heart pounding. "You knew him, didn't you?" The creature blinked slowly. "My dad," Cal whispered. Still no answer. But in the stillness, the truth settled like dust. It remembered. Rusty whined softly and nudged Cal's leg. The boy looked down, then up at the symbols again. "I think he came here with you. I think he saw this, drew that." The creature stepped forward, placing its hand gently against the wall now. Not to trace, to feel. The gesture was quiet, like prayer. Then its fingers brushed lower, toward a faint smear just below the carved circle, barely visible now, but tinged red like dried blood sealed in time. Cal stepped beside it. His fingers hovered near the same place. "Is that his?" A wind pulled through the trees outside, setting branches into a hush. The creature's eyes stayed fixed. Then, slow and trembling, it lowered to one knee. Cal stood frozen, and that was when the sound came. The crunch of boots, the brittle snap of dry grass under weight. Close. Cal ducked. The Bigfoot stood immediately, shoulders squared, posture shifting into something older. Wary. Rusty barked once, sharp, then turned toward the mouth of the cave, hackles raised. Cal whispered, "They followed us." The creature moved fast, stepping back into the shadows, its fur blending into the stone. Cal motioned Rusty to quiet, and the dog crouched near his leg. Voices outside. "I swear it's this way. Ridge lines match. Footprints go cold. Could be an old trail. We ain't leaving till we check." Hank's voice, unmistakable. Clyde's, slower, more uncertain. Cal felt his gut tighten. They were too close. He looked at the creature. It pointed toward the side wall, a narrow crack behind a veil of vines. A natural alcove, hidden unless you knew to look. Cal moved fast, pulling Rusty in. The Bigfoot followed, folding into the space with uncanny silence. Shadows swallowed them. Seconds later, Hank entered the cave. He scanned the space, shotgun loose in one hand, eyes sharp. Clyde stood behind him, mouth drawn tight. "See that?" Hank pointed at the floor. "Footprints, big ones." Clyde hesitated. "Could be old." Hank ignored him. He stepped closer to the wall, squinted. "What the hell?" He reached out, touching the circle symbol. His hand recoiled slightly like it burned. "This was here back then," he muttered. "Your granddad found something like this too." Cal held his breath. Hank's voice dropped. "You think it's just story? This is history, proof." Clyde shook his head. "I think maybe. It's best if we walk away from this." Hank turned on him. "You know how much that fur would sell for? Bones? You think I'm gonna let a freak animal outwit me again?" Clyde didn't answer. Hank's eyes narrowed. "You've gotten soft." A branch cracked outside. Both men froze. Rusty's low growl started deep in his throat. Cal pressed a hand to his snout, whispered no. Silence. Then, a single stone slipped from the ledge above, clattered to the ground. The Bigfoot turned toward Cal, gestured down. Cal understood. It was time to move. He crawled slowly toward the back exit, a narrow passage leading out through a tight squeeze between boulders. His dad had shown it to him once. Said it was a good way to disappear if a storm rolled in too quick. The Bigfoot followed, moving with eerie grace for its size. Rusty came last. Behind them, Hank shouted something, a curse. Then the sound of boots moving fast. They didn't look back. The passage opened onto a small ravine, slick with snowmelt and tangled roots. Cal ran, boots slamming into wet stone. The Bigfoot kept pace. Rusty barked once, then again. From behind, Hank's voice echoed, angry and too close. "You can run, kid. You won't get far." They crossed a downed log. Cal slipped, caught himself. The creature grabbed his arm and steadied him. Then, a loud crack. A stone above them jolted loose. Cal gasped. It tumbled, fast, hard, aimed straight at him. The Bigfoot moved. One arm shot out, caught the edge of the boulder, pivoted its weight, and shoved. The rock missed Cal by inches. The Bigfoot grunted, staggered, one knee buckling. Its arm scraped deep along the stone. Blood spilled, thick and red, and splattered onto the moss. Some of it landed squarely across the base of the symbol they had just left behind. Cal stared, not just at the blood, at what it touched. The circle, the two lines, now marked red again. A seal reopened, or reforged. He didn't understand all of it. Not yet. But something in his chest shifted. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was legacy. A thread stretching from his father's hands to his own. And whatever that meant, it was already too deep to undo. They kept running, through trees that remembered, through paths worn smooth by silence and sorrow, through a world that had always been watching but never speaking, until now. The first frost hadn't landed yet, but the leaves had already begun to bleed gold and ember across the hills. Bridger-Teton wore its October coat like a quiet promise. Brisk air, skies the color of creek water, and the faint scent of apple cider drifting through the breeze. Down in town, the fall festival had arrived right on schedule. Strings of orange lights wound through lampposts like ivy. Kids in flannel zipped between hay bales with candy-sticky fingers. Old men carved faces into pumpkins with dull blades and steady hands. There was laughter, music from a half-tuned banjo, and the sound of boots crunching gravel in every direction. Cal stood near the edge of it all, a plastic cup of hot cider warming both hands. His eyes scanned the crowd, but his mind wasn't there. Not really. Every sound felt just a bit too loud. Every person a bit too close. Rusty sat at his feet, tongue out, tail wagging in slow, uncertain rhythm. The leash looped loose around Cal's wrist, more for show than control. Maggie was talking to Pastor Levi by the church booth, both sipping from matching paper cups. She hadn't let Cal go to the cabin that morning. Said it wasn't safe. Said she had a bad feeling, though she never explained what that meant. So Cal said nothing. He tucked every thought about the creature, still hiding somewhere in the hills, still healing, still remembering, into the back pocket of his chest. Folded, hidden, the fire pit near the center of town flared as someone tossed in another pine log. Cal turned away from the warmth, eyes drawn instead to the line of trees beyond the last tent. Shadows moved between trunks, just wind, just squirrels, just... Then he saw it. Far off, barely distinguishable from bark and shadow, a figure. Still, watching, his chest tightened. No one else seemed to notice. A gust of wind kicked through, scattering paper napkins across the pavement. Cal blinked once, twice. When he looked again, the figure was gone. Rusty barked, low and quiet, not at anything in particular. Cal crouched, ran a hand along the dog's back. "You saw him too, huh?" Rusty's ears twitched. Laughter erupted behind them. A man with a mustache like a paintbrush stood atop a hay bale, spinning a story into the air. "I tell you, it wasn't no bear. Thing stood upright, 8 feet tall, easy. Eyes like coals, hands big as pie tins. I was out by Saddle Creek Ridge, thought I was gonna die right there." The kids laughed. A few adults clapped, half joking, half nervous. Cal stepped closer. The man continued, lowering his voice like it was gospel. "They say it's cursed, you know. Shot it once, 10 years back. Thing bled but didn't die. Slipped right back into the woods. Now it's come back, mad as ever. Stole a goat just last week off the Jennings property." Murmurs spread. Hank Pruitt leaned against a truck across the way, arms crossed, mouth twisted in half a grin. He watched the story unfold like someone who'd seen the script written before. Clyde stood beside him, quieter, chewing on the corner of a toothpick. Cal looked between them. Then suddenly Hank's eyes met his. Held, smiled. Cal turned away fast. His stomach knotted. Something wasn't right. He drifted back toward the booths, past jars of honey, quilt displays, a scarecrow contest with a crooked cowboy hat winner. Maggie spotted him and waved him over. Her hand landed soft on his shoulder. "You okay?" Cal nodded. "Just tired." She looked at him a moment longer than necessary. Then she handed him a small envelope. "This came in the mail for your dad. Must have been sent to the old P.O. box by mistake. Postmark's years old." He stared at the handwriting. Familiar. Tight letters. A return address smudged with water damage. He slipped it into his jacket without a word. "I didn't open it," Maggie added quickly. "But maybe you should." Before Cal could respond, a scream broke through the festival noise. Everyone turned. A woman near the animal pen clutched her coat, pointing toward the barn behind the general store. Her face drained of color. "What is that?" People rushed over. Cal ran with them. Behind the barn, in a shallow trench, lay the torn remains of 2 goats. Blood on the dirt. Broken fence posts. Clumps of dark hair caught in the wire. Gasps. Someone called the sheriff. Hank was already there, crouching by the fence, one gloved hand plucking a clump of fur from the wire. "This it," he said, loud enough for everyone. "Same kind I saw 20 years ago. Same beast. It's back." Panic flickered like dry grass under a match. Clyde stepped forward, but his face didn't match the story. He looked off, less sure. Cal's eyes darted toward the fur. Something about it didn't feel right. Rusty pulled at the leash. Not toward the crime scene. Away from it. Back toward the trees. Toward the shadow Cal had seen before. But now the whisper had begun. "Lock your doors. It's not safe out there. We should call the ranger. No ranger gonna stop something like that." And then, like a matchstick breaking in half, it happened. Someone shouted from near the school bus. "Tracks! Over here!" Everyone spilled toward the edge of the festival. Hank followed, shotgun now in hand, a prop suddenly made useful. In the dirt behind the dumpsters were large prints. Deep, spaced wide. But Cal noticed something strange. The spacing was off. Too perfect, too staged. Hank bent down, same as before. Rusty growled. Cal felt a chill crawl up his spine. This wasn't the creature. This was a setup. The fur, the blood, the prints. All too convenient. All too close to a crowd. He looked toward the woods again. Nothing. But then Rusty pulled again, harder this time. Cal let him lead. They cut behind the schoolyard, through the edge of the trail, until the sounds of the festival faded. And there, just past the tree line, stood the creature. Still, watching. Not snarling, not hiding. Just watching. Its eyes locked with Cal's, deep, sad, not afraid. Rusty walked forward, tail wagging, and for the first time, the creature knelt. Rusty sniffed its hand, then, without hesitation, licked its palm. Cal stepped closer. His voice cracked when he spoke. "They're saying you did it." The creature didn't move. "I know you didn't." It stood, slowly, hands open, palms exposed, as if to say, "I have nothing. I'm not hiding." Then, from behind them, a branch snapped. Cal spun. Hank stood 10 yards away, shotgun raised. He didn't shout. He didn't warn, just grinned. "Figured you'd lead me right to it, boy." The creature stepped back, placing its body between Hank and Cal. Rusty barked, teeth bare now, ready. "Step aside, kid," Hank growled. "You don't know what you're doing." Cal stepped in front of the creature. "I know you faked the tracks. I saw you plant the fur. I know you're lying." Hank's finger tightened, and then Maggie's voice rang out behind him. "That's enough!" She stepped into view, face pale, eyes burning. Hank spun. "He's hiding it, just like his father." "You leave him out of this." Clyde appeared too, but he wasn't carrying a gun, just a flashlight held low. He looked at the creature, then at Hank, then at Cal. "I think we need to stop," he said softly. "This ain't right." Hank's hand trembled. He looked at them all, one by one, then at the creature, and he hesitated. Cal didn't move. The creature didn't blink. Finally, Hank lowered the gun, not all the way. "But enough. I'll find the truth," he muttered, backing away. One way or another. The woods swallowed him. Clyde followed slower. Maggie exhaled, stepped closer, her eyes scanning the creature now. Cal looked at her. He didn't do it. She nodded once. I know. She stepped beside him, and the three of them stood there, between festival and forest, between story and truth. The creature stepped back into the trees. Rusty barked once soft, and the shadows closed around them again. But this time Cal wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The sky had been gray since morning, thick with silence. Not the quiet kind. The kind that presses in from all sides, like something coiled in the clouds was waiting to break. Cal stood on the porch of the cabin, his hand resting on the doorknob, gaze fixed toward the ridgeline where the pines swayed like nervous spectators. Wind rippled through the tree line, low and fast. Something was coming. Not just a storm. Inside, the creature shifted its weight, the injury along its arm still stiff, not fully healed. It sat near the fire, breathing slow, watching the boy. They hadn't spoken. They never did. But the air between them had begun to hold shape, like a conversation carried by glances and gestures. Rusty lay between them now, chin on paws, eyes half closed, as if he'd chosen a side long ago. Cal checked the latch on the window again. The storm radio sputtered static. The mountains had gone silent. No birds, no movement. He turned toward the creature, voice quiet. I need to go back out. The creature blinked, head tilted. I have to make sure they didn't circle back near the ridge. If they're close, we can't stay here. It didn't argue. Rusty stood, already knowing. Cal grabbed the canvas bag from the peg, slipped on his father's coat, still too big, sleeves rolled, and stepped into the cold. Snow had begun to fall in long diagonal lines, not yet thick, but urgent. He moved fast, boots cracking across ice-etched ground, Rusty at his side like a shadow in motion. They passed the tree with the carved initials, the one Cal's parents had left on their first winter trip, still visible through the bark. The storm blurred its edges now. The wind carried voices, not words, just tones, like shouts swallowed by distance. Then a flicker, movement between the trees. Cal ducked low, hand out to signal Rusty. The dog froze. Further ahead, shapes. Two men. Clyde moved slow, scanning the trail. Hank stepped sharper, posture rigid, bow in hand instead of the usual shotgun. That alone was different. Quieter, more deliberate. Snow's fresh, Hank murmured. Footprints'll show quick. Clyde hesitated, voice uncertain. Maybe it's moved on. Or maybe it's bleeding to death in a cave and we're letting it get away again. Cal clenched his fists. His heart thudded against his ribs like fists against a locked door. He knew what Hank was doing. If a gunshot didn't work, maybe poison would. They moved past, unaware. Cal slipped down the slope behind the ridge, took the lower path back, boots sliding on wet leaves. Rusty kept pace, every few steps glancing behind them. The snow was thickening now, blowing sideways. It stuck in Cal's hair, soaked the hem of his jeans. Every breath felt colder than the last. He rounded the final bend toward the cabin and stopped. The door hung open. A trail of broken pine needles led inside. He dropped the bag, heart pounding. No! Inside, the creature was gone. The fire was still burning. The blankets tossed aside. On the floor, a splintered piece of wood with a blood smear across it. Rusty darted in, sniffing, then barked, sharp, urgent. Cal ran back outside, followed the prints through the swirling snow, deeper into the woods, toward the hollowed ravine below the thermal springs. By the time he reached the edge, wind howling, he saw them. The creature staggered forward, breath ragged, one hand pressed against its ribs. Snow clung to its fur. It moved with purpose, not panic. Every few steps, it paused, listening. Not to the boy behind him, to something else. A sound only it could hear. Then Cal heard it too, the twang. Sharp, unnatural. A high whistle, followed by the sickening thunk of contact. Rusty barked, loud, desperate. The creature jerked forward, An arrow jutted from its shoulder. Cal's scream caught in his throat. It turned to him, eyes wild but not angry. It raised one hand. "Stay back." Another sound cut the air. The second arrow flew faster, lower. Rusty leapt. It hit him in the side. Cal's world shattered. The dog crumpled, yelping once. A horrible, human-like sound. Then went still in the snow. "No!" Cal dropped beside him, hands shaking. Blood soaked Rusty's fur. His eyes fluttered. His paw twitched. The creature stepped forward, shielding them both now, its body hunched. Another arrow flew past, missing by inches. Then, through the blur of storm, a new voice rose. "Back off, both of you!" Maggie. She stepped out of the trees, rifle in hand, coat whipping in the wind. Her hair was soaked, her voice thunder. "You shoot again, and I swear to God I won't miss." Hank stepped from behind a tree, bow still raised. "Move, Maggie." "No." "She's helping it," Clyde said, voice brittle. "Just like the boy." "You don't know what you're doing," Maggie shouted. "You don't know what that thing is." "I know exactly what it is." Hank's eyes were wild. "It's what killed my brother. It's what left my father bleeding in that gorge. It's what ruined this town." "No," Cal said, standing now, arms shaking. "You did." Hank turned to him. "I saw what you did. The goat, the prince. You framed it. You're the monster here." The wind screamed through the trees. Clyde lowered his bow. "This isn't justice." Hank raised his voice. "It's survival." Then something shifted. The creature stepped forward. No growl, no threat. It raised both hands, palms exposed. Blood ran down its arms, soaking into the snow. It knelt. The mountain held its breath. Hank stared, confused. And then, in a single, deliberate move, the creature reached toward Rusty, pressed a hand against his side, closed its eyes. A moment passed, then another. Rusty stirred. A twitch, then a whimper, then a breath. Cal fell to his knees, tears mixing with snow. The dog opened his eyes, weak but alive. The creature stood, swayed, then looked toward the ridgeline, toward a place Cal had never gone. It pointed, then it walked. One step, another, and Cal followed. They climbed through the white, every step slower than the last. The others stayed behind, caught in the echo of what they'd just seen. Half an hour later, they reached it. A hollow in the mountain, steam rising from a crack in the earth. The hot spring, hidden, sacred. The creature collapsed beside it, breath shallow. Cal knelt beside him, dipped a cloth into the water, and pressed it to the wound. Steam rose between them. The storm howled outside, but in this place, the wind didn't reach. Only the sound of breath, of healing, of something older than fear. Back in the woods, Maggie lowered her rifle. Clyde stepped away from Hank, eyes unreadable. And somewhere beyond it all, the mountain whispered again. The war wasn't over. But tonight, for now, the snow would bury the violence. And tomorrow would come with new light. Snow hadn't melted yet, but something in the air had shifted. The storm had passed 2 nights ago, but Bridger-Teton hadn't fully exhaled. Branches still hung low, heavy with ice, and the sky stayed the color of bruised steel. Cal walked slowly across the ridge, Rusty trotting beside him, healed but slower now, his steps cautious in the uneven snow. The dog had survived what should have been fatal, and Cal couldn't stop thinking about that moment. The way the creature had pressed its hand to Rusty's side like it was remembering something from deep, ancient memory and simply offering it back. The cabin door creaked when he pushed it open. Cold air clung inside, still smelling faintly of blood and pine. The fire had long since gone out, but he didn't move to relight it. Instead, he went to the old chest beneath the window, the one his father had told him never to open unless he wasn't coming back. For years, it had just been part of the room, a fixture, a weight. But now, it seemed like something living, waiting to be known. He knelt beside it and ran his fingers along the latch. The wood was splintered in places, the hinges rusted brown. When he opened it, the smell of time hit him. Dust, smoke, metal. And there, tucked in the corner beneath a flannel hunting shirt and a compass that no longer spun true, was a small tin box. Dented. Old. Cal lifted it out with both hands, fingers trembling, like he already knew it would change something. The lid groaned open. Inside, a folded letter, stained at the edges, and a broken arrowhead wrapped in cloth. The handwriting on the envelope stopped him cold. "For my son, Cal." He didn't open it right away. He stared at it like it might bite. Outside, the wind had picked up again. Rusty let out a low breath and rested his head on Cal's boot. He unfolded the letter. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't come home. I don't know how much your grandma told you. I asked her not to say too much. But I need you to know the truth about what happened in the woods that winter. I wasn't alone." Cal's eyes moved fast, but his breath slowed. "I tracked a set of prints after the first snow, larger than anything I'd ever seen. It led me to the edge of a ravine, and that's where I saw him. Not a monster, not a bear. A being. His eyes looked like something older than pain, older than any animal could carry." Cal's throat burned. "I slipped on the ice, fell hard, couldn't move, thought that was it. And then he climbed down, dragged me out. He didn't speak, didn't need to. He just looked at me like he understood I wasn't ready to die." A tear slid down Cal's cheek. He didn't wipe it. "I knew then? I couldn't tell anyone. Not because they wouldn't believe me, but because if they did, they'd hunt him, like they did years before." He paused, let that sit, then kept reading. "I met him again in the weeks that followed. He showed me places I never knew existed. Hot springs hidden in the snow, caves filled with drawings. We didn't share a language, but we shared something else. I helped him once, patched up a wound from a trap someone had set. He let me trace the marks on the wall of the cave. Cal could see them now, the circle, the parallel lines. His dad had been there. We made a sign, a kind of promise. Two beings, one mountain, a reminder that some lines don't have to divide. I carved it with his help, left blood in the stone to seal it." His fingers tightened on the paper. "If you've met one of them, and I think you have by now, then remember this. They remember. They forgive sometimes. But they don't forget. Protect them, and they'll protect you. But if men like Hank find them, this world will lose something it didn't even know it still had." Cal folded the letter slowly, gently, like it might crumble. The cabin felt heavier. Not darker, just older. Like it had always held this, and he just stepped into it too late. He looked up as Maggie stepped inside, snow dusting her shoulders. Her eyes found his, then the box, then the open letter. "You found it," she said, barely audible. He nodded. "You knew?" "I suspected. Your father never told me everything, but he wasn't good at hiding wonder. I saw it in his face when he came back, like something sacred had touched him." Cal handed her the letter. She held it for a long second, then tucked it back into the tin and closed the lid. "There's something else," she said. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a map. Old, creased, covered in handwritten notes. A trail was marked in red, one that wound deep beyond where any ranger posts reached. He drew this the week before he died. Said if anything ever happened to him, the truth wouldn't die with him. I never showed it to anyone, but you need to see where it ends. That night Cal didn't sleep. He watched the fire crawl up old cedar logs and listened to the wind scratch at the windows. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called out once. The sound was answered by something deeper. Not loud, not close, but there. By morning, he had made his choice. He packed the essentials: rope, a flashlight, the map, the tin box. Maggie didn't stop him. She only said, "Come back when it's time," and Rusty followed without needing to be asked. They moved fast, retracing the red trail from the map. Snow covered much of it, but some landmarks still stood out. A rock shaped like a kneeling man. A tree with bark peeled clean in a spiral. As they hiked higher, Cal saw signs again. Breaks in the branches, smoothed stones in odd places, and once a feather tucked into the crook of a pine. Then the scent hit him. Smoke, not fresh but recent. He slowed. The cave came into view just past the rise. Not the one he knew. A deeper one, carved into the side of the hill. The entrance was wide, moss hanging like curtains. Inside, the light shifted. Shadows moved. Cal stepped forward, Rusty close. There, near the back, was the creature. Bandages still wrapped its side. Eyes tired but alert. It didn't move as he entered. Only blinked once. Cal walked forward, pulled out the letter, and placed it on the stone floor between them. "He remembered you," he said. The creature looked down at the paper, then up at the boy. "I think you're the one who saved him, and now you saved me." It reached out, not to take the letter, but to press a hand to the floor near it. Then, slow and deliberate, it drew a mark in the dirt. The same circle, the same lines. 2 beings, 1 mountain. And then it did something it hadn't done before. It reached out and touched Cal's chest, just once, then rested its own hand over its heart. Cal mirrored it. No words, but something passed between them, a promise remade. But beyond the warmth of the cave, footsteps echoed. Distant, purposeful. Hank had found the trail. And this time, he wasn't coming for proof. He was coming for revenge. And the mountain wasn't ready to forgive him. Not yet. The snow had stopped sometime before dawn, but the cold stayed behind like breath that wouldn't leave the lungs. The mountain was quiet again. Too quiet. The kind of stillness that made sound carry in strange directions, echo off stone in ways that confuse the mind. Cal stood near the cave's mouth, boots buried ankle-deep in new snow, his hands trembling at his sides, though he wasn't shivering. The letter from his father still weighed down his coat pocket. The map was tucked under his arm, but it wasn't paper or words or legacy that brought him to this moment. It was choice. He looked up. Fog rolled low through the treetops, weaving around branches like it knew the end was near. The creature stood beside him, taller than the trees, breathing slow but alert, eyes like dark glass, watching not the boy but the world around them. Its side still bore the mark of the arrow from days earlier, healing but aching. They both knew this was no longer about survival. Something larger had cracked open, something that couldn't be put back. From below, footsteps. First one, then 3 more. Cal turned his head, listening. Voices now, slurred by distance but approaching fast. He knew them. Hank's boots hit hard against the frozen ground. Clyde's were quieter. There were 2 others now, townsmen stirred by stories and fear and promise. They came not as hunters, but as believers of their own tale. And that was worse. The creature didn't move. It waited, not in fear, in patience, like it had seen this before. Too many times before. Cal stepped forward, down the slope, toward the line where snow met pine. Maggie appeared beside him before he could speak. She didn't ask permission. She just walked to his side, her rifle slung behind her back, hands bare despite the cold. Her eyes were tired, but her spine was straight. She stood not like a guardian, but like a mother who'd made peace with what she couldn't fix, and would die trying anyway. Cal's voice came quiet. "They're coming." "I know." She didn't look at him. She looked at the fog. Then Hank's voice broke the air. "Get out of the way, Cal." The boy didn't move. Clyde was slower up the ridge, his face pale, jaw tight. "You don't have to do this," Cal called out. "You can still walk away." "I did that once," Hank snapped. "Look where it got us. You think you're the first kid to think he's different? Your father thought the same thing, thought he could protect it." Cal's chest burned. "And he did." Hank stepped closer. The shotgun hung from his shoulder, but his fingers twitched near the trigger. "You think that thing's gonna love you back, son? It ain't human. It's just waiting for the next weak link." "He saved me. He killed my brother. You don't know that. I buried the body." Silence. Then, from behind Cal, the creature stepped into view. Not charging, not hiding, just standing, tall, open and unarmed. The men froze. Clyde's eyes widened. Hank's hand reached for the strap. Cal raised his voice. "He's not here to fight." "He should be," Hank growled. Then the snap. Fast, sudden, gun raised. Finger on trigger. Cal moved first. He didn't think, didn't flinch. He stepped between the barrel and the creature, arms spread wide. "I'm not moving." His heart slammed against his ribs. His breath came in clouds. The mountain stood still. Then Maggie stepped beside him. Did the same. 2 bodies, not armed, just willing. The creature raised one hand, open palm, toward the sky, then lowered it, slowly. Toward its own chest, it stepped forward. Cal whispered, "No!" But it kept going. Closer and closer. It reached Hank's line of fire. Hank's eyes narrowed. Then, from behind, Clyde's voice. "Don't!" Hank turned, startled. "What?" "I said don't." Clyde's voice cracked, but he didn't back down. "You shoot that thing, you shoot him too." He gestured to Cal. "And her, and probably me." "You've gone soft," Hank spat. "No," Clyde said. "I've just started thinking." The tension snapped like old wood. And in that flicker of distraction, Hank stepped wrong. His foot slid. Snow gave way. And suddenly, he was falling. He tried to grab the branch beside him. It cracked. He hit the ridge wall hard. One leg scraped stone. His body tilted back. The drop below was shallow, but jagged. Cal screamed, "Hank!" Hank dangled for half a second, fingers clawing at snow. Then he slipped. The world spun. A blur of motion, and the creature moved, faster than anyone else. It lunged, caught Hank's arm just as he began to fall. Snow scattered. Time slowed. Hank looked up, eyes wide, blood on his chin. The creature gripped tight. Cal ran forward, reached the edge. The snow gave again. The ledge crumbled beneath their weight. The creature pulled harder. Hank screamed, "Let go! Let go of me!" But the hand didn't loosen. The creature held him like it had held Cal's father once. The same way, with the same strength. Then, something in Hank's grip slipped. He panicked, kicked, struggled, and in doing so, broke the balance. The snow let go. The creature lost footing. Hank fell. He hit the ground below, hard. His body twisted, and then stilled. The world fell silent again. Cal dropped to his knees. He couldn't see clearly, but he didn't need to. Maggie crouched beside him, hand on his back. Clyde stood a few feet behind, mouth open, face blank. The creature climbed back up slowly, fingers torn, breath labored. It didn't look proud, didn't look angry, just tired. It stepped past them, into the clearing again, into the falling light. Rusty barked once soft, then trotted forward. The creature turned, kneeled, and placed a hand to the dog's head, then to Cal's, then to Maggie's, and finally, it stood before Clyde. The man flinched, but the creature only looked at him, then raised a hand to its own chest and tapped once, like a heartbeat. Clyde didn't move, then, slowly, nodded. The creature stepped back, faced the mountain. Snow kicked around its ankles, wind pulled at its fur. Cal moved forward. The creature crouched slightly, brought its head down, and pressed its forehead to the boy's. For a breath, a single moment, then turned and walked into the trees, into the fog, into silence. Cal stood still, watching. Rusty let out one last bark, hoarse and low. Like a goodbye he didn't know how else to give. Maggie touched Cal's shoulder. Neither spoke. Clyde sat down on a rock and buried his face in his hands. The world didn't shift, but something inside it had. That night, long after the sun sank behind the ridge, long after the wind died down, Cal stood alone on the porch of the cabin. Moonlight touched the trees, and for a breath, just a breath, he swore he saw a tall figure standing between the trunks. Still, watching, not hiding, not anymore. And maybe, just maybe, not alone. Sometimes the most important stories aren't about victory or defeat. They're not about heroes in shining armor or monsters hiding in the woods. They're about quiet choices. The ones we make when no one's watching. The ones that ask, do we respond with fear or with compassion? Do we build fences or do we dare to reach across them? In a world that moves faster than it listens, it's easy to forget that kindness is still a kind of courage, that it's not weakness to care for something we don't fully understand, that sometimes the strongest thing we can do is choose not to strike. What if mercy wasn't just a reaction, but a legacy? What if empathy echoed longer than violence ever could? We like to believe that boundaries keep us safe, but the truth is, they often keep us apart. The deeper truth? The things we fear most are sometimes just reflections of ourselves, longing to be seen, not hunted, heard, not silenced, respected, not rewritten. And when someone dares to see through the stories we're taught, the myths, the suspicions, the walls handed down through generations, something unexpected happens. The world doesn't become smaller. It becomes more sacred. Because dignity isn't reserved for those who speak our language or wear our shape. It belongs to every creature that draws breath. Every soul that chooses not to return hate with hate. Every silent guardian watching from the tree line, just waiting to be recognized, not as a threat, but as a neighbor. The truth is, this world is full of things we don't understand. Maybe that's what makes it beautiful. Maybe that's what makes us human. Not how much we know, but how much we're willing to honor what we don't. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest stories aren't about proving what's real, but about remembering what matters. If this story touched something in you, a memory, a hope, a question you didn't know you had, I hope you'll share it. I hope you'll leave a comment and tell me what part stayed with you. I'd love to know your name, where you're watching from, and how far this message can travel, from one kind soul to another. And if you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe and be part of this growing community, a place where stories are told not to divide, but to connect, not to frighten, but to remind. Because in the end, kindness isn't just an idea, it's a choice, one that still matters. Now more than ever, thank you from the heart.